It is the summer of 1985, in a modest office in the Kichijoji district of Tokyo. Three men sit around a table cluttered with storyboards, ashtrays, and the debris of an animation studio in transition. One is a rumpled director with wire-rimmed glasses and a fierce, restless energy. Another is a quieter craftsman, his colleague of 2 decades. The third is a young producer, notebook open, trying to keep the dream tethered to the ground. Their names are Hayao Miyazaki, Isao Takahata, and Toshio Suzuki. Within weeks, they will register a new company under a strange, borrowed word, Ghibli. It is the name of a hot Saharan wind, and also of an Italian reconnaissance aircraft flown in the Desert War. Miyazaki, a lifelong lover of aviation, chose it to mean a fresh wind blowing through Japanese animation. But to understand that wind, one must first understand the ashes it rose from. The ashes belong to a studio called Topcraft. Founded in 1972 by Toru Hara, a veteran of Toei animation, Topcraft was a small subcontracting house on the outskirts of Tokyo. Through the 1970s, it drew frames for American television, Rankin-based specials, holiday productions, and finally an ambitious feature adaptation of The Hobbit in 1977. The work was steady, but the studio remained a hired hand, its animators servants to foreign scripts and foreign schedules. By the early 1980s, that model was faltering. American commissions were drying up. Topcraft's craftsmen were talented but broke, and their director, Toru Hara, was searching for a project that might carry them forward. He found it in an unlikely place, a serialized manga running in the pages of a monthly magazine called Animage. The manga was drawn by Hayao Miyazaki. Its title was Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Miyazaki, then in his early 40s, was already a respected animator. He had directed The Castle of Cagliostro in 1979 and worked on beloved television series like Future, Boy Conan and Heidi, Girl of the Alps. But he had grown frustrated with the constraints of commercial television. Animage's editor, Toshio Suzuki, had persuaded him to draw a manga, and from that manga now came the possibility of a feature film. The question was who would make it. Topcraft agreed to take the project. In 1984, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind was released to Japanese theaters, produced on a modest budget and a punishing schedule. Isao Takahata, Miyazaki's old mentor from their Toei days, served as producer. The film was a revelation, a post-apocalyptic fable of a young princess in a poisoned world, drawn with an ecological seriousness rare in commercial animation. It sold nearly 1 million tickets and won critical acclaim. And yet, in commercial terms, Topcraft could not survive on a single success. The studio's finances had been fragile before Nausicaa, and the film's demands had drained what reserves remained. Toru Hara, exhausted, faced the prospect of dissolution. The animators who had poured themselves into Nausicaa, many still in their 20s, risked being scattered to smaller studios or leaving the industry altogether. The wind that had blown through Nausicaa threatened to die in still air. It was Tokuma Shoten, the publishing house that owned Animage magazine, that intervened. The company's president, Yasayoshi Tokuma, had backed Nausicaa and seen its success. He agreed to underwrite a new studio, one built specifically around Miyazaki and Takahata, absorbing the core staff of Topcraft. On the 15th of June 1985, Studio Ghibli was formally established. Its offices, at first, were the very rooms Topcraft had occupied in Kichijoji. The founding trio each brought something distinct. Miyazaki brought vision, a torrent of images, worlds and characters that seemed to pour from him without pause. Takahata brought discipline and intellect, a director schooled in European neorealism and Japanese literature. And Toshio Suzuki, still officially an editor at Animage, brought the quieter art of persuasion, keeping publishers, distributors and creators in uneasy alignment. Toru Hara joined as the studio's first president, lending administrative experience. From the outset, Ghibli operated on a principle almost heretical in Japanese animation. It would produce only theatrical features, not television series. It would hire animators on full salary, not by the piece, and it would refuse to compromise on quality for the sake of speed. These principles were expensive, and by industry logic they should have been fatal. But Miyazaki insisted, and Tokuma Shoten agreed to bear the risk. The studio's first production began almost immediately. Miyazaki had conceived a story set in the sky. a tale of floating islands, sky pirates, and a lost civilization drawn from the myth of Laputa in Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. Castle in the Sky, released in August 1986, was the first film to bear the Ghibli name. It carried forward Nausicaä's themes of technology, nature, and youthful courage, but with a warmer, more adventurous heart. The film performed respectably, though not spectacularly. Ghibli survived, but only just. Suzuki and Miyazaki understood that a single misstep could close the studio for good. The next project would have to be even more distinctive, and to their surprise, it would be two projects released together. Miyazaki proposed a quiet film about two small girls in the Japanese countryside, meeting a forest spirit. Takahata proposed a harrowing story of two orphaned children in wartime Kobe. The pairing seemed commercially insane. My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies were released as a double bill in April 1988. A whimsical children's fantasy, alongside one of the most devastating anti-war films ever animated. Distributors were skeptical. Audiences at first were modest, but something remarkable happened in the months that followed. Totoro in particular refused to fade. Its gentle rural magic seeped into the culture through word of mouth, television broadcasts, and merchandise. The plump grey forest spirit became Ghibli's mascot, its image eventually stitched into the studio's logo. Grave of the Fireflies, meanwhile, entered Japanese classrooms as a work of moral education, its images of the doomed siblings Seita and Setsuko searing themselves into the national memory. Together, the two films announced that Ghibli was not one voice but two, the dreamer and the realist, working under one roof, occasionally clashing, always sharpening each other. In 1989, Miyazaki directed Kiki's Delivery Service, a coming-of-age story about a young witch starting her own business in a European seaside town. It became the highest-grossing Japanese film of the year. For the first time, Ghibli was not merely surviving, it was profitable. Toshio Suzuki, who had negotiated the film's television sponsorship deal, was drawn ever deeper into the studio's operations. In 1991, he formally left Animage to join Ghibli full-time. The 1990s brought expansion and refinement. Ghibli moved into a new purpose-built studio in Kogane in 1992, designed by Miyazaki himself with skylights, greenery, and a rooftop garden. Animators worked in bright, open rooms unlike the cramped subcontracting shops of the industry. Health care, salaries, and training programs became part of the studio's identity. The ashes of Topcraft had in less than a decade given rise to something entirely new, a factory of dreams that treated its dreamers with dignity. Success brought new pressures. Miyazaki, ever restless, worried that Ghibli was becoming too dependent on him. He announced his retirement more than once, only to return. Takahata worked at his own glacial pace, producing masterpieces like Only Yesterday in 1991 and Pom Poko in 1994 that pushed animation toward the textures of documentary and folklore. The studio's identity crystallized around a paradox: commercial success in service of uncommercial ambitions. In 2001, Spirited Away opened in Japanese cinemas. It would become the highest-grossing film in Japanese history and win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. The small studio born from Topcraft's collapse now stood among the most respected animation houses in the world. But the founders never forgot the fragility of those first years, the debt they owed to the animators who had stayed when there was no reason to stay. Toru Hara, who had shepherded Topcraft into Ghibli and served as its first president, eventually retired, his role in the studio's birth often overshadowed by the more visible figures. Yasayoshi Tokuma, the publisher who had gambled on Nausicaä, died in 2000, having lived to see his gamble vindicated. Takahata passed in 2018. What they had built together outlived them, a studio and something larger, an argument that animation could be art without ceasing to be popular. The wind from the desert still blows through Kichijoji. In the quiet rooms where Topcraft's animators once labored for foreign paychecks, new generations now draw frames for films that will be seen on every continent. The name Ghibli means a hot wind, a reconnaissance plane, a fresh beginning. But it also means, in the end, what happens when a few stubborn craftsmen refuse to let the fire go out. From those ashes, a world was drawn.